Just going to go through 9 tips on the Ally. I've had the Ally for a good few weeks now, and I've always been into sort of Windows PCs anyway, since I was a kid. During my time with it so far, I've found a few tips to sort of optimize things a little bit, to just make it a bit more streamlined, a bit better on battery and a bit faster. The first one is going to be to remove any unnecessary apps on the system. So with Windows it comes with a load of bloatware. So the best way to do that is just go to Start and then Programs, and then you'll see Add or Remove Programs. And I've already done mine, but on yours you'll find a load of unnecessary things here. Some of them you can't remove, like Dev Home, you probably wouldn't want that, but there's some things that Windows just won't let you uninstall, which is greyed out. But there's a load of, there's ones like pictures and just any unnecessary bits and pieces. I mean, there's even photos here. Again, it'd be nice to get rid of it, but you just can't. But it will take you a while to go through, but when you have, it'll just get rid of unnecessary things that you don't want. Like this one, I'd like to get rid of that one. You want to keep the Realtek audio stuff though, because that's the drivers for the actual sound card. And keep the ROG stuff as well, because it kind of needs that, because it's sort of a bespoke system that ROG software is needed for. Is to keep it constantly updated. So there's 2 areas for this. The first one's the Armoury crate, so we'll go into there, because for some reason Asus put 2 different areas where you've got to do updates from. So if we go in here and then Content, Update Center, and then straight away check for updates, we'll check that now to see if there's anything there, and we can see there's nothing there, so we'll get rid of that. The next part is what's called My Asus, and I've pinned it to the start bar here just for easy access. So we'll double click on this now, and I've already gone here previously, but when you come to the main page it's customer support here and then live update, and as we can see there is an update for it, and that's for the latest BIOS, which is 331, so I need to do that after this. I'll get that done. So yeah, check there, and you'll need to keep coming back a few times because there'll be loads of updates and things for you to get your system updated with when it comes out of the box. I'll leave that going because it wants me to update it. I'd also recommend, while we're on updating, to go to Windows Update as well. So it's right click here or just click on the screen, taskbar settings, and then Windows Update, and then you can see it's update. You'll need to keep checking for updates on this bit until there's no more to get, like here. And there's also advanced options and optional updates as well, and I've got them all for this and I've had no problems so far, so I recommend you doing that as well. Tip number 3 is to keep all of the files optimized as well on the system, because with Windows it tends to generate a load of junk files as you're using it, and eventually things will just get slower and slower and slower. But I've been using this program for many years now. I've never had a problem with it. It's always kept things running decently, really, as good as new. So this one, when you get it, just go to, I mean, you can do the health check here just for basics, or you can go to custom clean. And what I like to do is go through this. I always use Firefox, so I get rid of everything using Edge, because Windows defaults to Edge, so it uses it when you're clicking on various links and things. Probably best to leave your passwords and things on here though, so I'd leave them. When you've done that, you can run it, and you'll find it probably deletes at least a gig of data, because even me running this 10 minutes ago, I've still removed 14 megs. So when you've done that, the next thing to do is go to registry and then run that, and that will find a load of things as well. I always put no to backups, never had any problems, and then fix, close, and then run it again and keep running it until there's none left. So that's that. Tip number 4 is Malwarebytes. I'll be leaving all the links in the description below to these apps and things that I'm showing you here. So when malware loads, it pops up here, and then we will do a scan. Another thing with this, it's got its own antivirus software that sort of replaces Windows Defender, but I don't use that because you've got to pay for it in the end. It's probably great, but Windows Defender does quite a good job by its own right. But every now and then, every couple of weeks or so, just open this up and check it, because it's really, really good at finding things that Windows Defender might not pick up on, just every now and then, and we can see here it's done. So that's good. So when you've done that, there's no problems. Make sure when you close it as well, because you can close the window, but it's still here. Same with ccleaner as well. That likes to run in the background, but again, just get rid of it. These are sort of things that you would only run every couple of weeks or so. Tip number 5. If you go down onto the taskbar here and right click if you're using the mouse, or just click it with your finger, go to Task Manager, it'll be a different display to this. If you double click on the top, you should see the screen that I've got here with the icons here on the left. There's this one here called Startup Apps. If you click that and then click Status, it will show all the ones that are enabled and those that are disabled, but the only ones you want to keep enabled are just the essential ones, like Windows Defender, which is Security Health, Sys here. The 3 that you want to keep active, the main ones are the ROG, Steam if you're using that, and then Windows Defender, which is this security one here. Next tip, which is tip 6, is to get rid of encryption that comes as standard with this device on the SSD, because I've been looking into it and there's quite a performance slowdown with it being left on, and you don't really need it because it's a gaming unit, and if it's going to get stolen, the whole thing's going to be going, not just someone stealing the hard drive out of it or the SSD. So to find out if it is encrypted, which it probably will be, but it's good to check, is to go to the Start, and then we'll go to Disk Manager, which is called Create and Format Hard Disk Partition. So we click that. This will bring up the disk management, and you'll see, you probably won't see this one because this is my SD card, but the one here, disk 0, you'll see in there it will say BitLocker encrypted, and if it is, which it probably will be, to get rid of it, we'll go to Device Encryption, so Device ENC, and that'll bring up Device Encryption Settings, and you'll see here that'll be turned to on. So if you select that to off, it'll take a couple of hours to de-encrypt everything, but when it's done, there will be a performance boost, because especially with SSDs, there's a lot of problems with, there's quite a massive slowdown even on the fastest ones. So the Ally doesn't need that. It's a waste of resource really keeping that on. So turn that off, that'll make things a bit more speedier. So tip number 7 is changing the GPU RAM default. So that's done in the Armoury crate, and by default it uses 4 gigs, which, depending on what you're doing, most of the time is not enough. If you're doing AAA games like Borderlands 3, Doom, Elden Ring, stuff like that, Path of Exile, if you're into that, then it's not quite enough. So what we'll do, we'll change it, and that will be, so Armoury crate settings, operating mode, and then GPU settings on the left here, and then I recommend setting that to 6, because that will leave 10 gigs of RAM with Windows or the system, and then 6 gigs dedicated to the video card, because it uses shared memory 780M, which is in the Ally. So I've been doing some testing with this, and there's definitely a performance increase. It's a lot more stable, a lot smoother. Yeah, I'd definitely recommend using this. If you're using emulators though, maybe not so good from what I've read, but I've not tested it. But all my testing yields better results, so I'll change that there. Tip number 8 is using upscaling. So on the actual Ally, on the left hand side above the D-pad, you've got the little triangle button, and if you click that, you'll see this screen here, and RSR is basically an upscaling system, and when you're playing it on the actual device, I found that using 720p with RSR enabled, it's really hard to tell the difference between 1080 native and 720p with upscaling. But what you do see a difference in is the performance increase, because you can get a lot of games running at such high frames and it's a lot smoother, it's just a lot easier on the system. Better battery, and loads of other reasons. But to get that activated, firstly you need to go into the game. So let's use PathXL to start like this. So I'll just load this up. So what we'll do, we'll go to options. It's already set to 720p, but you'll probably find that yours is set to 1920 by 1080. So if you turn it like this, and then we'll exit the game, and then you come to this, press the button there, make sure RSR is enabled because a lot of the time it's disabled, and then when you load back into the game, it will be upscaled to 1080p. And then another good thing to do as well is if you leave things uncapped, you'll be getting over 100 frames a second, 110, and then it'll go down to 90, 80. I recommend setting it to a specific frames in your game, so an FPS cap. So for this I've set it at 70, and you'll find that when you're playing a game then it's just everything's a lot more stable because it's able to maintain that constant frame rate, and it's a lot easier on the system. It's not just blasting all the time trying to get the highest frames possible. And you know, anything above, there is a difference between 60 and 120 frames a second, but if you keep things at like a steady 70 or 80 or 90, then it's just a better experience overall. So I definitely recommend doing that. So that's that. Another really good one that I found is, by default, when you go into your power settings, there's 3 operating modes. There's so what they call it, silent, performance and turbo. But silent's on 9 watts, performance is on 15, and turbo's on 25 or 30 when you got it plugged in. But with testing, I've done a lot of research into this, and the best settings are actually 18 watts on battery and 25 watts. Well, you can even have slightly less if you really want to, because it's sort of diminishing returns. The more watts you put into it, it generates loads more heat for like a few more frames, and then it blasts the system with heat and things. And there's problems with the SD cards as well, like melting, and it stops all that happening, or it sort of reduces it massively, the risk. But to do that, it's in Armoury Traits again, and we will go to settings, operating mode. With manual, it uses a different manual mode on battery, because at the moment we're on battery, but when I'm plugged in, which we can't see at the moment, but if I plug it in you'll see a different manual mode, because people get confused with that. So with this I've got it set to 18 watts because that's the best one for keeping the temps low in the system. It stays at about 60 degrees, and with this SPL and SPPT and FPPT thing, for gaming it's quite unnecessary because it just sustains extra wattage and a few extra frames for like a couple of minutes, and sometimes like 5 seconds, I think it is. Yeah, 10 seconds on that one, 2 minutes on that one, and that's just the power limits. That's fine. But it's a kind of a waste of time because it will boost itself, generate all this extra temperature for 2 minutes, and then it will stop. So you don't want that. You want steady frames and consistency. So what I've done with mine, and it's made a world of difference, is I've set it to 18 watts on battery, and I've set all of these to 18 as well, so that way it doesn't boost itself and generate a load of temperature that you don't need and inconsistency. And with the fans I've left it on number 3, so defaulted to 3, and then when you've done that you click this tick button, so click that and then it will save it. So next time you plug in it'll default to this mode, and the same thing happens with plugged in as well. So if I plug this in, that will go to 25W because I've renamed these, and to do that you just click here, rename. And the same with 25 watts as well. So when you plugged in, so just come here again when it's plugged in, set everything to 25, put those on position 3 because it's been great in my testing. Yeah, and that'll do you really well. Like, battery lasts longer, everything's more consistent, and with that and frame limiting as well, yeah, it's happy days really. I hope that this has helped you somewhat and maybe shown you some things that you might not have done or seen before, especially with the encryption thing. And all the best with your Ally. I hope you enjoy it as much as I've been enjoying mine.